Itu Mas ya, mohon bantuannya nggih, temennya yang belum join disuruh join ya, diajak join ya.
Setiap warga negara Indonesia memiliki hak untuk mendapatkan pendidikan yang layak melalui lembaga-lembaga terpercaya, salah satunya adalah sekolah. Banyaknya sekolah yang tersebar di Indonesia, di kota, di desa, bahkan di daerah terpencil yang sulit dijangkau menjadi bukti pentingnya pendidikan bagi kita. Karena hal itulah dibutuhkan sosok seorang guru yang ikhlas menyalurkan keilmuannya, memiliki kualitas SDM, profesional, pedagogik, kepribadian, dan sosial yang unggul untuk mengembangkan para peserta didik. Menjadi guru yang handal dan profesional adalah suatu tuntutan yang melekat. Setelah berangkat dari tekad dan kemauan yang kuat untuk menjadi guru, mari ayunkan langkah menuju perguruan tinggi penghasil tenaga kependidikan. Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan atau FKIP Universitas 11 Maret yang berada di Kota Surakarta menjadi salah satu solusi dari permasalahan tersebut. FKIP salah satu lembaga penghasil guru yang telah diakui mutu dan keberadaannya. Profil lulusan FKIP UNS menjadi guru yang kreatif, inovatif, cinta budaya, dan berjiwa milenial telah dikenal di berbagai sekolah dan lembaga pendidikan di seluruh penjuru tanah air, bahkan di luar negeri.
Visi FKIP UNS adalah menjadi pusat pengembangan ilmu, teknologi, dan seni di bidang keguruan serta ilmu pendidikan yang bereputasi internasional dengan berlandaskan pada nilai-nilai luhur budaya nasional. Dalam pelaksana organisasi, FKIP UNS menerapkan budaya kerja aktif, achievement orientation, berorientasi pada pencapaian, customer satisfaction, kepuasan pelanggan, teamwork, kerjasama tim, integritas, visionary, berpandangan jauh ke depan, dan entrepreneurship, kewirausahaan.
FKIP UNS terletak di beberapa lokasi, selain kampus Induk Kentingan, juga di Ngoresan, Kleco, Pabelan, dan Kebumen. Saat ini FKIP UNS mengelola lebih dari 10.000 mahasiswa dengan 49 program studi, terdiri dari 25 program studi S1, 18 program studi S2, program profesi guru, dan 5 program studi S3. Untuk program S1 dan S2, terdiri dari program studi dalam rumpun ilmu pendidikan, bahasa dan sastra, matematika dan IPA, IPS, dan pendidikan teknik kejuruan. Untuk program studi S3, terdiri dari program studi S3 Ilmu Pendidikan, S3 Pendidikan Bahasa Indonesia, dan S3 Pendidikan Sains. 59% program studi telah terakreditasi A dan sisanya telah terakreditasi B. FKIP UNS memiliki tenaga pengajar atau dosen yang berkualifikasi unggul. Jumlah dosen sekarang 392 orang, 173 orang diantaranya bergelar doktor dan 33 orang bergelar guru besar. Lebih dari 50% dosen telah berhasil menulis artikel di dalam jurnal internasional bereputasi dan terindeks. Beberapa buku dan karya paten juga banyak dihasilkan oleh para dosen. Dalam rangka menuju World Class University, telah sedang dan terus melakukan program internasionalisasi, diantaranya adalah Visiting Professor, program praktek lapangan internasional, Research Kolaboratif, Joint Conference, Joint Publication. Beberapa perguruan tinggi yang telah bekerja sama program internasionalisasi antara lain dari Amerika Serikat, Jerman, Jepang, India, Singapura, Thailand, Brunei Darussalam, dan Malaysia. Untuk merespon perkembangan teknologi informasi, lebih dari 50% program studi di FKIP UNS telah menerapkan metode pembelajaran berbasis digital melalui program Blended Learning.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon and warm
Waalaikumsalam.
greetings to everyone. Honorable the Dean of the Faculty of the Teacher Training and Education, 11 Maret University, Professor Dr. Imam Sujadi, the Head of Master Program in Primary School Teacher Education, Professor Dr. Sri Marmoah, our distinguished speaker, Professor Reka Cole from Curtin University, Australia, esteemed lecturers, and all participants joining us today. First of all, let us express our gratitude to Almighty God for His blessings, allowing us to gather in this academic event visiting Top Professor 2026, entitled Inquiry-Based Science Education in Primary Schools, Research-Based Practices and Global Perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Natania Janani Haryanto, and I'm honored to serve as the Master of Ceremony and moderator for today's event. To begin our program, we will listen to the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya, followed by Mars UNS. We kindly invite all participants to listen respectfully.
Universitas 11 Maret kami di bawah panji Pancasila. di dalam kiprahnya Tridharma, pedomannya dengan teman semangat yang mengejar demi keagungan dan keluhuran. Alma Mater 11 Maret, Alma Mater tercinta. Universitas 11 Maret kami, tegakkan langkahmu. Universitas 11 Maret kami, semoga jaya selama-lamanya.
Thank you for your attention. Dear all participants, before we begin to the main event, we kindly ask you to turn on your camera during the session. Thank you for your cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the opening speech delivered by the Dean of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Professor Dr. Imam Sujadi. To Professor Dr. Imam Sujadi, the time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Distinguished Professor Rika Hall from Certain University, Distinguished Chair of the Master's Program Primary School Teachers Education, Professor Dr. Rotsli Marmuah, MBD, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my great pleasure as the Dean of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas 11 Maret, to welcome you to the Visiting Top Professor 2026 program organized by the Master's Program in Primary Digital Teachers Education. On behalf of the faculty, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to our distinguished speakers, Professor Reka Hall, for joining us today. We are honored to have an internationally respected scholar in science education who will share valuable research-based insight and global perspective with our academic community. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of today's event, Inquiry-Based Science Education in Primary School, Research-Based Practices, and Global Perspective, is highly relevant to current educational development. Inquiry-based science education is essential for fostering critical thinking, curiosity, and problem-solving skills, which are fundamental for preparing your learners to face future challenges. For teacher education, especially at the primary level, this approach is crucial. It equips future teachers with effective pedagogical strategies that encourage active learning and meaningful classroom experiences. Learning from global best practices, as presented in this forum, will greatly contribute to improving the quality of teacher education in Indonesia. This program also reflects our faculty's strong commitment to international collaboration and academic excellence. Through initiatives such as Visiting Top Professors, we aim to strengthen our global engagement and research cultures. I encourage all participants to actively engage in this session and take full advantage of this valuable opportunity. Finally, with great pleasure, I officially declare the Visiting Top Professor 2026 programs open. May this event be fruitful and inspiring for us all. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much to the Dean of Faculty, Professor Dr. Imam Sujadi, for the inspiring opening remarks and for officially opening this event. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin to the main presentation, allow me to briefly introduce our distinguished speaker today. Professor Reka Cole is a professor at the School of Education, Faculty of Humanity, Curtin University, Australia. She currently serves as Deputy Head and Discipline Lead at the STEM Research Group, Curtin University. She has nearly 4 decades of experience in teaching and educational research, particularly in STEM education, classroom learning environments, educational evaluation, and teacher professional development. She is also actively involved in various international academic organizations and editorial boards. Professor Reka Cole has received numerous national and international research grants, including projects funded by the Australian Research Council, Australia-Korea Foundation, Australia-India Council, and UNESCO collaborative programs. Her research interests include STEM education, and then classroom and learning environments, teacher-student relationships, and education program evaluation, and research-based teaching practices. She has published extensively in reputable international journals and frequently delivers keynote speakers and workshops in various countries. In addition, she convenes the International Conference on Science, Mathematics, and Technology in Education, an international conference held biannually around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Reka Cole. Hello, Professor Reka Cole.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for
Good
being here
afternoon,
on a
Prof.
Friday afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon,
Good
Prof.
afternoon, Prof. Hello, Prof. Reka.
Yeah, yes, Sriwamu.
Okay.
Okay, you can start. Yeah.
Can I share my presentation before I start?
Oh, yes, of course, Prof. It's our great honor to welcome Professor Reka Cole from Curtin University, Australia. Thank you for joining us today, Prof.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see it clearly, Prof.
Okay. And is it in slideshow? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's
Yeah.
already in slideshow.
Is it okay for me to start now?
Yes, okay, Prof.
Yes,
Reka.
Prof.
Yeah. Please,
Time is
thanks,
yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much. First of all, I need to give my thank you to Professor Sri Mamu, who invited me for this excellent opportunity, and then, of course, Dean Professor Imam, who started this session with a great enthusiasm and the right start, I would say, the right, very good words. But at the same time, more so, I need to thank all the participants here. I might have in this presentation made a mistake. I thought that the participants are primary education, pre-service teachers, but it seems that we have in-service teachers and university academics too. Doesn't matter, we'll make up for it. As you would know, it's a visiting professor program, and I was supposed to be in Solo with you all, and we would have been running these lectures interactively. But because of the current conditions in West Asia, our university has taken a stand and they're not allowing us to travel, although I know there is no problem between Australia and Indonesia, but that's the condition it is right now. So at least we are thankful we have the virtual capacity and that this freedom that we can interact with each other here. I'm going to run this lecture for about 2 hours or maybe less than 2 hours now that we have already used first 15 minutes. But there could be some, I wanted, because I had planned to run it in an interactive way while I am with you there. I've cut that bit, but I may ask you to do some activities in between. So either keep a pen or paper with you, or you can have your laptops with you where you can write, or even if you have your phones with you, you can use the notes section there to whatever I ask you to write. And towards end of the lecture, we will visit that and see whatever we have done. Is that okay?
Okay, Prof.
Thank you. So on a piece of paper, and I may ask if you're writing it on paper, that's fine. But if you're writing it in either on your, computer or your phone, write down your name. I may ask you to email or hand over the hard paper to Professor Mamu at the end of the session so that we can see what we were out to do. We have done justice with your time. We don't want you to leave with the feeling that we wasted this time. Now, I'll give you 3 minutes to write down 3 questions you want to, or you would want to be answered in this session today. So I'm starting my stopwatch. You have 3 minutes from now. You can start. If you want to discuss it with the person sitting next to you, feel free to do that so that you feel empowered to write what you're writing. Just 3 small questions. You have 1 more minute. Just try rushing a little bit. Our time is over and I am moving on. Hopefully you have written down the questions. If not, as we go, you can change your questions, whatever you feel like. It was just to get you initiated into when you teach in an inquiry way, you ask these questions to your students. Now, what are we going to do today? As I asked you to write down, is the main aim would be to understand use of contemporary approaches to teach science to improve student learning. And in particular, it is science inquiry approaches. Why is it important? And that too now, because maybe in the past we would think that it's only scientists or people who have science careers, they need to understand what science is. But in today's day and age, we want the whole society and whole community to be scientifically literate. They need to know the scientific processes. And primary age is the age when we can get them interested into a subject. Research has already established that career aspirations or love for knowing something is developed by the age of 12. So if we don't get our students, interested into a subject matter early on, that is the primary school, they will never develop love for that subject. There are very few cases, but majority of cases, they need to know the science for making day-to-day decisions about the life. So primary science teaching is very, very important. And thank you for all of you and me as well, that we are contributing to society in a very significant way by enthusiasming children to take up science learning. And inquiry is a very potent way of teaching students. As your dean earlier said, what is inquiry-based science education? You can call it by any name. You can call it inquiry. You can call it that it is student-centered approach to science learning, where you could call it learners actively investigate scientific questions. You give them a question, and then they have to find answers for it. We will come to it in details as we go. But what does this open or active investigation do? It encourages creating curiosity in students. They get to think critically. They become problem solvers, and they have to collaborate, which goes into 21st century learning skills. When we talk about the United Nations Sustainability Goals, or every country has their own way of calling 21st century learning skills. Here in Australia, we have a different definition, and America uses very different name for it. But globally, we call it, 21st century learning goals. And in those skills, curiosity, critical thinking, problem solving, and collaborations are the key skills. And Australia, our Academy of Science, nearly 20 years back, developed learning science by doing. Those were resources created. There was a website which sort of has been made defunct for decades together, 2 decades, I would say. Most primary teachers used resources developed by Science by Doing, and these resources are available to teachers all over the world. You are free to go onto that website and check and register as a teacher, and you will have access to numerous resources. And what we do in inquiry-based learning is you engage pupils in designing and conducting investigations. And investigation is the basic part of science. How do you understand it? As a student myself, I can talk about my primary years. Our teachers would, when it came to science learning, we only did theory. And I had no relational understanding of what it means. We did have certain examples, but that was not good enough for me to get the real understanding till I could do it with my hand. And that is what inquiry science learning is. Again, why is inquiry-based science education, why it matters for primary education? As I said, it develops scientific literacy right from early age, and doesn't only develop relational understanding, but we are also talking about the conceptual understanding of the things. We develop the communication skills, creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking. Again, it's coming to the 21st century learning skills: creativity, communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. I have had quite a few parents telling me that my child is being given what you call a project at university or even in a school, and it's a group project where other group members, they don't participate actively, and it is impacting my child's scores in the subject. My answer generally is, or I would say most of the times is, what are you going to do? Your child, if you want your child to work on their own, what happens when they go and in life of work? In life of work, they have to, in today's world, they have to be creative. They have to be able to communicate effectively. They have to work with others. We are working collaboratively with each other, and they have to be critical thinkers, because most of the knowledge these days, in olden days, we would give an exam to students and they were supposed to write the answers. But these days, we carry answer to everything in our pockets, in our phones. Google is a big teacher, or anything else with advent of AI. Lots of things have changed, but not that all AI is correct. What all AI generates may not be correct. Mostly when it comes in academia and they come up with references, they are most of the time incorrect. So, basic thing is, we need to train our children how to ideate the right knowledge. And for that, they have to be critical thinkers. They don't have to accept anything or everything what comes through. We are currently in an age where use of AI will happen anyhow. As teachers, we are trying to stop, how do we stop plagiarism? How do we stop use of AI? It has toppled most universities, university staff members, and the leadership. what should we be doing around it? No matter how many rules and regulations you build, students will know how to work around it. Now the question is, I tell my students, you can use AI, but it has to come in with human intervention. And for that human intervention, critical thinking is very, very important. They have to ideate the information which they are producing, whether it is correct or incorrect. And if it is correct, how can we, if it's incorrect, where is it incorrect? And how can we, improve it? Now, the question comes, what is inquiry and what is science inquiry? What do we do in science inquiry? Science inquiry starts with posing questions. You as teachers can give a project to students, and we will come to certain projects towards the end of it. And students should be starting their inquiry with posing questions. How can we do it? Why should we do it? Or it should be first should be why should we do it? How can we do it? And what all needs to be incorporated in doing it. And then when they pose those questions will be around formulating testable hypotheses. Most of you would have done a research project, whether it was for your master's or PhD. You would have developed a hypothesis. That means, what are you going to do? Then comes the next stage, is how are you going to plan, conduct, and critique your investigations? That means you have to plan the investigations you're going to do for formulating these testable hypotheses. You will plan, then you will conduct, and then you will critique. While you are conducting your, these hypotheses or testing your hypothesis, something may not work, and failing doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're failing or doing it correctly or incorrectly. But if you're failing, that is also a success. And what applies to me and you also applies to our students. Tell them, if it hasn't worked, you can retry and think, where did we go wrong? And then again do it iteratively till we get the right answer possible. Then when you are critiquing investigations, the students are collecting and analyzing the interpreting evidence. And in science, there are no right or wrong answers. Or in research, I should say, there are no right or wrong answers. Whatever are the findings, they can communicate and then evaluate their claims, solve problems, draw valid conclusions, and develop evidence-based arguments. And these arguments can be critiqued again from this stage. They can again go up to the stage 3, which can be critiqued and again run and see whether this could have been done differently, and those can be the alternative explanations. And you can have multiple examples of it. And I would have wanted, had I been in physically with you, I would have asked, if you are formulating a testable hypothesis, what is the hypothesis you would do with your students? What sort of testable hypothesis your students would establish? Knowing that you're living in Solo and Indonesia is an agrarian society, I know there are methods in lots of water bodies, water is being wasted. How will they be able to work on a inquiry project and look at the water bodies and check whether these bodies we can, work a sustainability method where this water can be preserved. Or there could be many other things, like if we need more food, whatever is happening in West Asia, world may not be getting enough fertilizers in coming months, days, and months. And we are being pushed to do organic farming, which in a way is good. But on the other side, the downside is with organic farming, we are not so advanced, and we may end up with lesser food and world needing more food. So what is anything? Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
everything okay, Prof.
Yeah. I overheard something. I thought maybe some. So those are the things we need to consider and can be taught in science inquiry classrooms at primary level. I know we have been, now that I've gone through the stages of inquiry, science inquiry, can you tell me the same piece of paper, write down few traditional practices and what inquiry practices you have been using in your classrooms or you would use in your classrooms? You have 3 minutes from now. Can you hear my answer correctly? Is my answer correct? Anyone? Is Professor Mahmood there? Okay, start now. Okay. Have you written? One person, someone can speak, please. Who has written? Okay, wonderful. May I know your name, please? Pardon? Your name, please? I can't hear you. Can you tell me? Okay, there was something in the comments. I can't see the comments. I messed up.
I think Miss Fadila can speak, so I read for her.
Yes, please.
She thinks in traditional practice, the teacher usually dominates the learning process. Students are more passive listeners, and the focus is on memorizing facts or theory.
Wonderful.
Meanwhile, in inquiry-based practice, students actively ask questions, explore ideas, and the teacher acts as a facilitator who guides them to discover understanding on their own.
Very good. Wonderful. So that's what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say here is, as when we are teaching by inquiry, we ask questions. Make students ask questions with themselves and make sure that they're understanding. As a facilitator of inquiry teaching, you should be asking more and more questions. Yeah, I had messed up, and is my slides, or you can see that?
I still see on the activity 2.
Oh yeah, and it's moving now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we do have, I'm based on research. Because as I told you, I wasn't aware that I'm working with teachers. I thought I'm working with pre-service teachers. I wanted to keep it to their level. That's why I haven't kept any references here. So what happens in inquiry-based activity lessons that is my you're looking at inquiry-based activity lessons? Oh, the slide you are seeing, what does it show? Inquiry-based activity lessons?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, so then it's fine. So, okay, my screen. Yeah. So what happens is teacher only introduces an activity and they take the role of a director or an organizer. They don't give students instructions, what is to be done. They don't. I've seen some inquiry lessons built by teachers where there are step-by-step instructions, like, we have recipes, cookbook recipes. We don't want to be giving them cookbook recipes because if we do that, then it's very, very close. Even if it's an inquiry, it is very, very closed book, and students have no control over the activity. There is not much scope for critical thinking. They don't need to communicate amongst themselves. But when teacher becomes a director or an organizer, the purpose behind that is that you create the interest of students in the phenomena. When we are doing a science activity, it should create interest in students, then only they will understand. And to create that interest, they have to elicit their prior knowledge. Like if a student, we are asking them to heat something, most of students would know that if it is a metal thing, we can't touch it with hand. They wouldn't know why not, why will it heat up, but they would know that they will not be able to hold a metal spoon with hand if we are putting it in heat. While as if it is a spoon with a wooden handle, they can hold it. They may not know why, but the illicit prior knowledge will be there. Then they will outline the activity themselves. They can tell what sort of equipment we needed, and they will provide time and outcome expectations that is for teacher to do. So when it is illicit prior knowledge, again, as a director or organizer, teacher will be creating interest in students when they're explaining the activity. Through that activity, that prior knowledge can be elicited. They will only outline the activity, let them know what the equipment they have, but as a teacher, inquiry can go haywire. So teacher has to set up the rules, which would be how much time you have and what are the outcome expectations. Something is not right. Yes. So what do we do in inquiry-based activity lessons? As I said, teacher will discuss it, which is very, very important. So the purpose is to encourage students to share results and help students summarize main ideas and concepts. There are many myths about inquiry-based teaching, which is inquiry classrooms are unstructured and chaotic because control is not with the teachers, they are only directors. And we are always used to very controlled classroom. There was a time where quiet classrooms were considered to be good classrooms, but where some activity is going on, that was not considered to be good. But inquiry method is not unstructured, but it can be chaotic. You can't access inquiry-based learning. We can, because they say we can't. The myth is that you can't evaluate inquiry-based learning, what students are learning, or inquiry is only good for high-achieving students. I would say it is excellent for not very high achieving students, because high achieving students can be motivated. Not so high achieving students, we need to create that interest in them, which can be done through inquiry. And research has shown when we run lessons through inquiry, the control and experimental group, in experimental group, students' learning shows statistically significant differences from the control group. And hands-on science is same as doing inquiry. Hands-on science means what we would call doing experiments. Experiments are very structured, as I said, the cookbook recipe, while as in inquiry, teacher doesn't give answers. Answers come from students. And if you're teaching a class of, say, 30 or 40 students, and you have 10 groups of students, 10 groups may have 5 to 6 different answers, because every student's response will be different, their finding will be different, their way of inquiring can be different. And in inquiry-based teaching, it's never okay to tell students that to students the answer to their questions. That's not true, because they have inquired, they have investigated. And that is what happens when we look at inquiry and constructivism. When they are doing inquiry, they are constructing their knowledge. And there comes the role of the teacher as a director to lead them in the right direction, what they should be learning, what they should be doing, and the teacher doesn't have to leave them for nothingness. Then there are other myths as well. All science subject matter should be taught through inquiry-based approach. That is also not correct. There are certain established facts in science. Those you can't change. I can't change the laws of motion. I can give students a chance to inquire about it, but if they're coming out with a different alternative answer, that is not correct. So we can give them a chance, but not all science subjects can be, all science matter can be taught through inquiry-based approach. True inquiry occurs only when students generate and pursue their own questions. That's not correct. We can float a topic and then ask them to choose their own way of inquiring it. It is impossible to cover everything in curriculum using an inquiry-based approach. I agree that inquiry-based approach takes longer time to teach than the traditional way, because we have, our curriculums are quite big. We are pressed against those curriculums to complete. We have an examination-based curriculum, but it depends upon the teacher, how well they, combine different ways and different topics and have few items in the same inquiry covered. You can teach multiple concepts through one project, and that too can be inquiry-based. So what are the levels of inquiry? There is structured inquiry, guided inquiry, and open inquiry. Structured inquiry are even though it is inquiry, but I don't see it as a genuine inquiry, because in structured inquiry, you give structured instructions to students, limiting their their chances of developing critical thinking or all 21st century skills. Guided inquiry is more achievable in our classrooms because we give them some instructions, but leave certain things for their imagination where all 21st century skills come in. We can also run and I would say guiding inquiry is the most appropriate to be used in primary school classrooms to keep things under control. And open inquiry is an inquiry which is very, very open and can be misleading for certain students or quite time consuming. They can develop misconceptions through open inquiry, although the learning happens most in open inquiry, but teacher's role as a director, as an actor, becomes very significant in open inquiry. I can, because we are running another session tomorrow, I will give you, examples of when we ran different types of inquiry projects with primary school students and what the results were. You would have heard quite a lot about 5E model. 5E model also was started here in Australia by our Academy of Sciences. And according to that, we will come to 5E's later. Because what happens when we do the inquiry way of teaching, it has potential to develop alternative conception. But when we teach through 5E model, it can, when they develop alternative conceptions, it can inhibit learning of new concepts, and it can differ markedly from scientific views, are often not recognized by the teacher. This happens when you do an open inquiry, can happen, can be a starting point for teacher to build upon, and similar across different cultures and countries. Keeping in view, you and I right now are living in two different cultures. So what are the scientific perceptions we have or the concepts we have? And if we put our students to do open inquiry, they can develop alternative conceptions. And what happens because of that is all these points, and we can stop that through teaching through 5E model. So examples of alternative conceptions can be force of gravity is greater on heavy objects than lighter objects, making them fall. That was the first thing. Will apple fall first or a piece of paper fall first? When the law of gravity was developed, or I would say invented. So these are some alternative basic science conceptions. Objects moving at a constant velocity must have a force acting on them. They can be friction or a force. The sun is living. Is sun living? Heat and temperature. People confuse between heat and temperature, or they are the same. Current is the same as voltage. Voltage in your bulb and current. Sometimes we have, small voltage bulbs, but emitting lots of light. Seeds are non-living. It is a very, very prominent misconception in children. Our plants get food through their roots. They do get their food through roots, but there are other parts as well. So can we run, these activities? We can run inquiry activities around all of these alternative conceptions. I will not call them misconception. These are alternative conceptions. Most teachers call them misconceptions, but it depends upon you how you draft them and then talk about them in your classroom. And these are some important projects which you can run with your students and bust their alternative conceptions. And what is the role of teacher in inquiry-based science education? Teacher will support as far as we have come to, as a facilitator. They will question, they will reason, they will collaborate, and then reflect. And what are those practices as they have to, take into consideration would be if students have done an inquiry and come up with a solution, they need to scaffold that inquiry. They will need to guide the discussion in the classroom, and which would be through providing feedback. If this has happened, why it has happened. Ask questions to students first. And if there are any alternative conceptions, provide, evidence of the right answers and encouraging evidence-based thinking, encouraging students to think correctly based on what we saw in the last slide. They can develop alternative conceptions and they will have discussion with their students. And for that, teachers need strong pedagogical support for successful inquiry-based implementation. That means teacher professional development has to happen. And don't be worried. I'll send this PowerPoint slides to you all for further my inquiry. I did give you some examples of alternative conceptions. Wherever you're writing, can you write down, every person can write down 2 alternative conceptions which students develop or general society has. And as a science tutors, as a science teachers, science academics, you know that that's not correct. Can you please write down? You have 2 minutes, sorry. Thank you very much. Can someone tell me, because why I asked it is we are living in, there could be an alternative conception which can be very particular to Indonesia solo. Can someone talk about alternative conception which I didn't put in my slide?
Okay, Prof. You can hear me, Prof?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not
Can I
turning
read it?
on my
Can I read
camera
it? Thank
because
you very much. This is Puri Ashishanti. Students think that heavier objects always fall faster than lighter objects. Yes, that's what I said. Many students believe that plants get their food mainly from the soil instead of producing it through photosynthesis. Yes. Some students think that phases of moon are caused by Earth's shadow. Students often believe that seasons happen because the Earth is closer to or farther from the sun. Some learners think that electricity is used up as it moves through a circuit. You are absolutely correct. But I would really, not right now, maybe in future when I come to your university, I'd really love to think of certain alternative, conceptions which are very specific to Indonesia. And we will have to work out a way how to discuss them with students, how can we bust them and create their, improve their understanding. I'm sure at the end of this session, we may have many more such comments based on what you have written or based on what you will email to Professor Sri Murmu. Moving ahead, when I was talking about 5E model, this is what we need to do if we are teaching through inquiry way. 5E model is we think of a project, or an activity. We tell students this is the activity we are going to do. So the first step would be we engage with students. And more recently, I have been doing makerspace activities in STEM education with my students, or we have also been doing design thinking with our students. And we may not have the same classification, but the steps are similar. And more so, design thinking is a part of inquiry. What we do, we engage students. You may give it any name, but you engage with students, you capture their interest, and where the alternative conceptions are identified so that they don't get trapped into it. Then we explore various hands-on activities through which scientific concepts can be elaborated, and students can use their own language. It's not important for students to always use the language which is written in the books. They can explain it in easy way. And then next step for teacher comes, and this is where they are experimenting, when they are exploring. Then the teacher gets them together and asks for the explanation. If this, phenomena has happened, why has it happened? After students' explanation, teacher will explain in their own way. Teacher may direct them to textbooks or to the internet and introduce the scientific terms. And then happens the elaboration where students apply new learning using their scientific language. You can see you go through engage, then explore, which is the main activity, explain part. Engage is mostly teacher. Explore is more of students. Explain comes to teacher. Elaboration comes to students where they apply the learning and using scientific language. And last but not the least is the evaluate. When we talk about inquiry teaching, it's not only the activity, it goes up to the evaluation. Have students really learned? The myth about this inquiry teaching is that it can't be evaluated, but that is wrong. And these are the 5 steps you will have to take into your classrooms when you are running any science inquiry, learning of science through inquiry. And I can give you, this is an example. If you have to teach students the properties of oil or compare properties of water to properties of oil, the first lesson you will run is engage and ask them to look at both of these. What are the properties of water? What is the properties of oil? A drop of oil, what happens to it when you put it on a surface, and a drop of water. Then you will ask them to explore, which could be cohesion and surface tension between the two. Then they may explain it through digital resource or molecular structure. Then they will elaborate as water as a universal solvent. Then you may ask them to develop a concept map, which will be the assessment where you will be evaluating about their concept of adhesion, cohesion, solvent, water molecule, polar charges, hydrogen bonding, mixture, solutions, dissolve. All these sorts of words will come in that concept map, and it depends upon you whether are they putting in, water molecules and dissolve together or somewhere else. That is what comes to the teacher. It is very open model and no concept map. If you have 30 students in your classroom, no concept map will be similar. That means you are increasing the authenticity in your assessment. You're giving them assessment on a topic which they have learned. They can't plagiarize, they can't copy, and that's what's happening. So now, keeping in view, I'm talking to teachers here, when we talk about the learning pyramid, it shows that students retain very little from lectures, a little more from lecture style and reading. And even if we show them movies or, videos on a process, they learn best by actively participating and communicating their learning to others, which is more interactive than and better. the second point here is very important. They do learn. Learning by doing is significant. That means in inquiry, we are putting students in the deep end and asking them to run an activity and learn from it. But it doesn't stop there. When they reflect on their learning, take your own example. You're walking on a road and you observe something. You observe something, it is striking, but it's most likely that after a few days you would have forgotten it. But if you're walking with a friend, or you reach home and you sit with one of your colleagues, family members, and you reflect on what you saw, it is more likely that you will retain that knowledge for a long time. So that's why when we go to the phases of 5E model, where students are required to explain their learning, that is where their learning gets cemented. And they are most likely to retain that knowledge for a long time and possibly lifetime. So in inquiry, we engage, we actively explore, and after exploring, we explain. And that's where the learning gets cemented. I did ask you earlier, what are the teaching strategies you would use in inquiry-based teaching? There were a few, which I'll have to see later, is you can brainstorm, which is the first stage when we call engage them. You can ask students to do a concept map, which generally happens, it can happen as brainstorm, it can happen as assessment. Gallery walk. Gallery walk is a very strong way of teaching students, is you ask all students to develop their concept map and then ask students to move around, and there is peer learning happening. I might have missed some point which they learn from other students. Gallery walk has proved to be very, very significant in science learning. Envoy, which could be I check yours and someone else checks mine. Jigsaw as well, we put the pieces together. Everyone's working together and develop a bigger framework. And last but not least is predict, observe, and explain. Before an activity starts, we can ask students, if we are going to mix, like I can talk about water and oil. If we mix water and oil, tell me what's going to happen. They can write down their prediction, then they can observe. We mix in a pot, we mix some water and then put some oil over it, what happens? And then we can ask students to explain. And these are simpler strategies to teach in an inquiry way. It always doesn't have to be, big projects, them going out of the classroom, them doing some big things. These are simple things, but they are inquiring. They're inquiring through brainstorming. They're inquiring through predict, observe, explain. I can give you a simple example or an activity which you can do in a classroom, and that's a very doable in primary classroom. Take a coin in your hand, and you don't need much equipment to teach through inquiry. Take a coin, stopper, and water, and ask students how many drops of water this coin can hold. Can someone tell me a regular 10-cent coin? How many drops of water can a coin hold? Anyone? Would 10 drops be okay? This is a homework for you. When you go home today, take a coin and whatever you call it, water stopper, and through that put water on a coin. And I may ask you tomorrow, how many drops of water could a coin hold? Mostly prediction would be around 10 to 15, maybe lesser. I don't know. I'll leave it to you. You can give them such questions about, in group of 4, predict the 4 questions about electric circuits, using an N-voice strategy, move clockwise to discuss your prediction with another group, set up and observe the electric circuits, explain your observation. When we talk about 5 E's, it always doesn't have to be that every child is doing an activity. You can use POE model, you can have just one circuit on the teacher's table, and they can use it as an inquiry way of teaching. As far as brainstorm and concept map, you can ask them to draw concept map on any of these science topics, like states of matter, respiratory system, food chains and webs, forces, heat structure and function, physical and chemical change, relationship of earth and sun or seasons. And this is inquiry learning. And on a sheet of A3 paper, they develop a concept map, link, and concept. It depends upon you, how you want to teach it. Would it be in groups of 4 or 3s? But these are simple topics which can be taught in classrooms using inquiry. And what it does, it captures students' interests and identifies alternative conceptions. Often hands-on activities to explore scientific concepts. Students use their own language. And as I said in the last slide, we are reiterating all the things through these activities, which I explained to you earlier. I could say, when I said compare properties of water to properties of oil, cohesion and surface tension, and explain, they will do digital resource on molecular structure. And when they elaborate, we can talk about water, the universal solvent, and then evaluate we can do through concept map, and these are the words they can use there. Moving ahead, we can use the gallery walk with other students. And in many inquiry lessons, scientific investigations are explored through teacher or student questions. We can ask students to develop the questions and teacher answers them. And that is also our inquiry way of teaching. So what are the parts of investigation? We have to plan, we have to identify the problem, identify variables, whether they are independent, dependent, controlled, and as I said in the beginning, develop a hypothesis and plan the design. For conducting, do preliminary trials, carry out experiment, observe, measure, record data. These will be the parts of investigation. And for that, we need to process the data, calculate, construct graphs if required, evaluate findings in relation to problem or hypothesis, and evaluate design of experiments. Now, if you are investigating, you can ask students, use the planning and report your worksheets, or planning the report worksheet to help design and conduct, or use Envoy to compare results, how different groups have got different results. I wish you had opportunity to ask me questions here, but what is very important, you would have seen in 5E is teacher's role comes at 3 points. It's very important in inquiry that the questions are asked correctly. I've attended few classroom observations where teachers ask questions, and most of the questions are recall questions. You don't have to ask the recall questions. What teachers have to ask questions is through effective questions, they should be enabling the teacher, enabling the students to and be able to monitor their learning. Effective questioning helps students construct their own meaning of ideas, involves teacher acting as facilitator rather than questionnaire, involves using open and closed questions. I would try to stay away from closed questions where the answers are yes or no. Use Bloom's taxonomy. Ask lower order thinking skills first and then go higher and higher. And do take account of wait time. Do you know what wait time is? It involves listening and responding to student answers. Wait time is give students some time to respond before they answer questions. Closed question can have one clear answer. Through closed questions, we can check their factual knowledge and are useful for knowledge and comprehension. But open questions can have many answers. It encourages students for extended answers and encourage their higher order thinking. That's why I said we can start with closed questions, but as we move on to open order questions. So, as I said, what do you mean by wait time? Wait time is very important. Sometimes as teachers, we ask questions and we don't give students time to think. Research has shown if teacher gives that wait time of at least 3 seconds to students, it leads to more positive classroom environment, more quality teacher-student and student-student interaction, It gives students time for higher order thinking. It leads to improved academic achievement and reduced behavioral problems. Because these students get time to process the question, it also improves their language. It also gives them time to think. And I can give you, in Bloom's taxonomy, the knowledge, which is factual recall, it is lower order thinking. Comprehension, we move on to understanding the meaning, but still it is given. It is not analyzed or created by the students or synthesized by them. Application goes towards middle order, where they are applying the knowledge to their new situation. When they are analyzing, they are relating the knowledge they are creating and organizing parts of their ideas in their head. Then they synthesize. And synthesis is very important, where they're rearranging ideas into a new whole. And evaluation, when I said they're reflecting on their learning, they're making judgments based on evidence or criteria they got. So you start with knowledge and move on to evaluation, which is also happening in 5E model. Evaluation is the last one. That's what happens even in inquiry learning. You start with knowledge and move on to making judgment based on evidence or criteria. It's very important because in inquiry, we don't tell students what is right and what is wrong. So what sort of questions do we ask students? So if we are asking closed question, will it fall or not? The answer is yes or no. But if we ask them questions like, what would happen if it is whatever, it's not supported? How would you describe that? What do you need to do next? Why do you think this happened? Can you find a way to do it differently or whatever? How do you know? They can come up with an answer and you can say, how do you know this? How do you come up with this idea? And what other questions do you have? These are the questions when you are, questioning students, you should be asking, and don't expect answer instantly. Give them some time to process the knowledge, the information, and you will see the answers will be more in depth and it will improve the learning environment in your classroom. This I'll leave for later. I had just kept that based on Bloom's taxonomy, you develop two questions. One could be lower order thinking, which could be anything like where student knowledge is checked, or a higher order thinking. I'm not wasting, I'm not taking your time right now because we are running short of time. You could, when you have time, you can do that. Now, the last one, because there is a myth that you cannot assess formative, inquiry methods. So what are the types of assessments, which are diagnostic, formative, and summative? But you will have to talk to yourselves about amongst your peers is how your teacher uses assessment in the classroom, or how you use assessment in your classroom teaching, and write it down on a piece of paper you have. I'm not going to ask you to do this right now, but this is something worth thinking to yourself and discussing with your colleagues. In diagnostic assessment generally happens at the start of a unit, a study, an activity, and when we talked about the explore phase of inquiry, that's where you look at, as a teacher, what your students know, or how or what they really think. And it benefits teachers because it allows teachers in planning the sequence of the learning. But when you do any diagnostic assessment, make sure it's fun, but at the same time, it has to be safe for students. Then comes formative assessment, where you provide feedback to students, and that feedback should be able to allow you to monitor their learning. The feedback should be such that it assists students in construction of deep understanding. That's when you are questioning them during the explore stage of inquiry. And be sure, as a teacher, you are continuously providing feedback so that students learn better. And it also informs teacher in their planning for the future stages. Last comes the summative assessment, which generally happens at the end of the study period, end of year, end of activity, and where you provide summary of what and how well a student has learned. Often is converted into a grade, a percentage for reporting to parents or whatever, and needs to measure higher order thinking. It should not be only reporting on the knowledge you have provided in the classroom, but if they have done created their knowledge through inquiry, they would have developed deeper understanding, and it would have given rise to higher order thinking. You can use a variety of techniques for summative assessments, and I will give you. So you can use interview for diagnostic or formative assessment. You can use concept maps for all types of assessments. You can use notebook for diagnostic and formative, rubrics for formative and summative, peer review. Never use peer review for summative assessment, because summative assessments generally have a grade, so may be problematic. Self-assessment can be formative as well as summative if you have a good rubric or marking criteria. Portfolios can be formative and summative, and student report can be formative as well as summative. So you have multiple examples of assessment which can be used in or are being used in inquiry way of teaching of science. We do have challenges in implementation of inquiry way of teaching. If teachers are not properly trained how to run inquiry teaching, they may struggle. And based on that, they can, struggle with the time. If they are well trained, time is not going to be a kind of constraint. If they are well trained, they will know how to, even cope with large class sizes. Sometimes it's lack of resources, but again, if they are well trained, they would know how to use the basic equipment available. There are, as I said, there are curriculum pressures and assessment challenges. There is research indicates that minimally guided inquiry may not always improve outcomes. It has to be good inquiry, and for that, teacher training, teacher professional development is very important. Here in Australia, most of the science teaching happens through inquiry way, because teachers, when they are in school, they are taught through inquiry, and when they are in teacher training programs, they do multiple units of inquiry way of teaching. But these days, we are really lucky. We have lots of, since the technology has come, we can use simulations, we can use virtual labs, there are interactive whiteboards, there are many data collection apps and online collaboration platforms, which can be very, very important and helpful in inquiry way of teaching. But the best thing is, if we teach through inquiry, we are engaging students. They can have access to real world data through technology, and we can personalize learning opportunities for students. Because when we are teaching through inquiry, a student who doesn't like one way of inquiry, they are free to pick up some other way. So for effective inquiry-based science teaching, I would say provide teacher professional development. That's for the best practice. We will have to balance inquiry with explicit instruction. Not everything, which I said in the beginning, has to be inquiry. We will have to use age-appropriate scaffolding. We can't be using a sort of activity which is good for year 9 students, for year 3 students. Year 3 students will have their own activity, year 9 will have their own, and if you give year 3 activity to year 9 students, they will be bored, and vice versa. We have to encourage collaborative learning, which again is coming to a 21st century learning skill. We have to make it very, very authentic. Like if I'm talking about inquiry and I'm talking about pollution in a water body, I should use that in the community context. Think of a water body which is in your backyard, which is in your community, and then let students work on that. You can't be talking about a river here in Perth while living in Solo. Or I can't be talking about rainforest in Southeast Asia to my students who have no access to rainforest. They can watch it online, but its best practice would be that they have an authentic perspective to it. And the assessment has to be in sync with the inquiry goals. If your assessment is, they know that what they are doing in inquiry, it won't be assessed or it won't count towards their grade, students will not take interest in it. Future directions, there is a lot of STEM integrated inquiry learning in Curtin University. We are running few units using STEM integrated inquiry learning for teacher training. We do use AI and digital inquiry tools in teaching. There is a lot of focus on sustainability focused science education because our planet is, threatened at the moment because of the human activity, what we are doing. Cross-cultural collaborations is very important because we are living on one earth and political boundaries have put people away from each other. So it's important to test what's happening in one community. Does it apply to others as well? And we have to put greater emphasis on scientific literacy. Currently in world, there are 8 billion people living. Not all 8 billion people have to be scientists or be in science-related careers, but they have to be scientifically literate to live a good life. So those are the emerging trends or future directions for us, and which can be achieved through inquiry learning. That is from me, but I would love to hear from you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Reka Cole, for the insightful and inspiring presentation.
Have I stopped sharing?
Yeah, you can stop the sharing, or maybe
I am not able.
wait. Okay.
Have I stopped?
Yes, Prof.
No.
Sorry. Okay. Dear all participants.
No,
now,
but I would like any questions they may have.
Okay, Prof. Now we move to the question and answer session. Participants who would like to ask question are kindly invited to raise their virtual hand or write their question in the Zoom chat box. So if you want to ask to Professor Reka Cole, please raise your hand. Okay, for the first question, we would like to invite Mr. Rifan to deliver the question.
Thank you, Natania. Good afternoon, everyone. Everybody can hear my voice?
Very well.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to express my deepest respect to Honorable Dean of the Faculty, Dr. Imam Sujadi, the Honorable Professor Marmuah, and our distinguished speaker, Professor Reka Cole. I hope you are doing well. And please accept my apologies for joining this session because I'm as an alumnus, but I was very interested in this topic. Thank you, Professor Sreka, for the great presentations. It was real fun for my topic about the dissertations, yeah. And I'm so happy to talk with expert of an inquiry topic. My question is, as we know about the many international paper discuss inquiry and how to integrate in with the other model, and based on your presentation also, and because I think this inquiry has because this This because every step syntax or inquiry has its own weakness. Yeah. In my case, Indonesia primary school, we often see a bottleneck during the PASE, like data exploration or investigations. Also in these stakes, students often lose focus and teachers struggle to give the right amount of the help. Sometimes the help is too little, or sometimes it's too much, which stop students from thinking for themselves. So, in your opinion, Prof, what do you think about this trend of hybrid integrated inquiry? Is this integration necessary to fix the flow of pure inquiry, or does it risk losing the real spirit of the inquiry approach? Thank you, Professor Reka Cole and everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Revan, for a very, very good question. And I know this is a problem. Engaging students can be a huge issue. And that's what I came to 2 points. When I talked about the model, which is 5E model in inquiry, which we have been using here for a long time now, is a very important phase because students can get distracted. So it depends upon teacher. What's the topic they choose, how they introduce, how they create interest in the subject, and then follow up with students. So this goes in if I'm using 5E model. And today I only talked about the 5E model. The other model, which I have been using for the last few years now, is the design thinking model. And in design thinking, the first step is ideating a problem, where students have to ideate different types of possible answers to the problem we are giving. Unless that is done effectively, all other 4 steps will not happen. And that's why I said teacher professional development is very, very important in this part. Unless teachers have that confidence how this part is to be led, if teachers start giving answers to students themselves, there is not going to be any inquiry. So it's very important that teachers, they do their homework correctly. They look at the problem, they look at the possible solutions, they scaffold student learning, they ask the right questions. If you're not asking the right questions, how do you expect student learning will happen? Keep on giving them formative feedback as they are going. What happened, I'm not saying it happened every class, but what happens where teachers are not well trained, they focus on the summative assessment. They don't look at the first phase where they will see what students know or what they don't know. They don't provide them any formative feedback, and then they sort of lose these students. So briefly, I would say teacher training, selecting the activity which is most appropriate for this group, selecting the difficulty level. If students are not used to inquiry way of teaching or learning, and you start with a difficult activity, they won't learn. Start a simple activity first. Number 2 can be a little difficult. As I went through the Bloom's taxonomy, is where they have to only use their lower to middle order thinking skills, and then they move in third, fourth, fifth activity where the difficulty level is higher. So teacher has to be a director and a very important actor there, how they work on it. Does that answer your question?
I think it's enough, Prof. Thank you so much. I'm interesting because yours like engagement is K is super using supporting model 5A and design thinking. It will help for the student, yeah. But I think it's the K of the problem is the teacher, yeah. Teacher have to upgrade on the skill teaching, yeah.
And that's what happened today.
Yeah.
The information behind it. I had to keep it very generic. I didn't give any examples, but I will be coming with some examples tomorrow. Some projects which we have done in the past.
And then the last is the power of question, yeah, Prof, yeah, is the K also.
Yeah.
Okay. That's enough for me. Thank you.
Ask the right questions. Don't ask a question yes or no.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't know, ask them why, how, where.
Yeah.
And I've given you lots of questions. Effective questioning is, there was somewhere. Yeah, which was what would happen if, how would you describe? When students say something, ask them, how would you describe that? That makes them think. And when they think, they learn. And I have a number of questions here, which I ran through.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for everyone.
Anyone else?
Natania, time is over, but I think just maybe one more.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question is from Miss Fadila.
Hey, sorry, you can hear me the voice, my
Very
voice?
clearly, Fadila.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I apologize for not turning on my camera because my device does not support it well.
Not a problem. We need to
Okay, thank
communicate.
you.
That's what.
Okay, so Prof, I'm very interested in this discussion and would like to learn more about it. I have a question regarding inquiry-based learning. Since inquiry encourages students to be very active, I imagine it might be challenging to implement, especially in large classroom, and within certain curriculum policies. I would like to know how this is implemented in Australia, because in Indonesian, personally, I have never directly experienced in inquiry-based learning in the classroom, so I still have limited understanding of how it works in practice, and I think it might be difficult to apply. So, ideally, what class size or number of students maybe is most suitable for implementing inquiry-based learning effectively? My question is curly, Prof.
Yeah. Thank you, Fadila, for a very good question. I don't think there is one model, and especially when you talked about the number of students. Here in Australia, in primary schools, since you are from primary school, it depends upon the early childhood. We have lesser students, but by the time students reach in year 4, 5, 6, has ideally 32 students in each class. And private schools can have lesser students. But I have observed schools in Singapore and even Russia, where in Russia you have classroom size of around 80 students in the classroom. And what I saw, that teacher is putting them in groups, which is excellent for developing those 21st century skills and trained by that. I don't think inquiry way of teaching science is difficult or cannot be done. But as a science teacher, if you're a primary school science teacher, don't think that you can teach whole curriculum through inquiry. Because if you're teaching through inquiry, teacher needs to get confidence and have the look, and not confidence with only teaching a set of students coming from a very different cultural background. You may read in research papers that something worked in America. That may not apply to my students in Solo. There is difference, cultural difference, even between the students living in Jakarta and in Solo. So what I would say, Fadila, if you are wanting to start teaching through inquiry, in year 1, tell yourself in next 6 months, I will do 2 inquiry activities, which will cover part 1 and part 2 of my curriculum. It could be one activity from heat. I'm only looking at physics, but yeah, let's look at one activity around photosynthesis or germination. Ask students to germinate seeds and how plants grow. And then they can write a report about it as you go, because germination is a very simple activity. I gave you, example of cohesion. I gave you an example of a coin and how many drops of water can be put on a coin before it starts spilling. You'll surprise yourself if you do this activity at home, and you can start with it and teach the concept of cohesion to your students. You can teach the concept of different ways of heating to students. What happens, combustion, how it happens, and then next term, next 6 months, I'm going to do these activities. As you gain confidence in it and have tested, because some activities work, some don't work. I'm going to give you an example of, in tomorrow's lesson, when we tried teaching nanotechnology in schools, we were required, because in nanotechnology, what happens is that you increase the surface area by cutting the element in small nano pieces. So I had thought that I'll take a piece of tofu and ask students to cut it and then see how the area increases. But I was not allowed to take a knife, not even a plastic knife in primary school. So I took Lego pieces, but it didn't work. Some activity can work, some may not work. That too is okay. Don't get disheartened. But if, as a committee teacher, you are intending for deeper understanding of scientific procedures of students, start small and keep on building. That would be my advice. Thank you very much. Have I answered your
Thank you,
question?
Professor.
That's what Australian teachers do. They start small and then build on it. And that helps both students as well as teacher. Because if students are not used to inquiry way of learning, they will get confused if you start everything teaching by inquiry. Start maybe 1 or 2 topics, and then next term 3 or 4, and then it will increase. And then you will have many topics which may not, inquiry will not be appropriate for those topics.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I think this helping me for the understanding. So we need for the teacher to be creative in the learning for student like that, yeah?
Yeah, that's
Professor.
right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Okay, thank you, Professor Rekako, for your insightful answer. And thank you for the active participation and engaging discussion. Before we end this session for today, let us have a photo together to capture this meaningful and memorable experience. So everyone, please turn on the camera and don't forget to put your best smile for today.
You have a pretty girl here.
Okay. For the first slide, smile. Okay, the second slide. Okay, the third slide. The fourth slide. The fifth. And the last slide. Okay, thank you, everyone. And on behalf of the committee, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to our keynote speakers, Professor Rekako. Thank you for today, Prof.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Lovely. I wish I was with you physically there next time.
Thank you, Prof. And then I would like to say thank you to the Dean of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, 11 Maret University, Professor Imam Sujadi, the Head of Master Program in Primary School Teacher Education, Professor Dr. Sri Marmoa. Thank you so much, Prof. All lecturers and the participants for joining today's event. So, I hope this session provides valuable knowledge and global perspective for the advancement for the science in primary education. I would also like to apologize for any shortcomings during this event. We will meet again tomorrow. Yes, Prof.
Same time.
Yeah, at the same
Look
time.
forward to seeing you all.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Rekako, Professor Marmoah, and then thank you for your attention and participations. Maybe that's all from me, Natania Janani Haryanto, as your moderator and your master of ceremony. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon and see you again, everyone.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon all. Okay.
See you
Thank
tomorrow,
you,
Prof. Reka. Thank you
Prof.
so much,
Reka.
Prof.
Mas Mbak, don't forget to fill in that attendance ya. Presensinya jangan lupa diisi ya.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Prof.
Yes, Prof.
Dear all participants,
Yes,
don't
Prof.
forget
Yes,
to
Prof. Thank you,
fill the attendance form before leaving this session.
Oke, makasih Mbak Natania, Mbak Dika.
Oke, terima kasih Prof. Mar, terima kasih Mbak Dika.
Izin lip ya.
Oke, Prof. Terima kasih semua partisipan. Jangan lupa untuk mengisi link presensi yang sudah ada di kotak chat box di Zoom. Sudah dikirim oleh Mbak Deka dan Mas Wisnu, itu sama saja linknya. Silahkan diisi terlebih dahulu. Untuk Bapak, Ibu, dan teman-teman semua, mungkin yang membutuhkan rekaman hari ini tersedia juga di YouTube-nya Magister PGSD, bisa di search dengan nama Magister PGSD. Di sana ada video dari live hari ini, jika memang butuh. Mungkin sekian dari saya. Mohon maaf jika banyak kesalah kata dan juga kekurangan. Saya pamit undur diri. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih,
Terima
Dek.
kasih, Mbak Deka.
Besok aku ya jam 1.
Insya Allah jam 1.
Ya. Sehat-sehat selalu.
Oke, sama-sama Mbak Deka.